Hey folks, today on Two Kinds of Music, we rate a perfect discography. Okay, today we are taking a look at Talk Talk and ranking their discography, and I think they have a perfect discography. I love all 5 of their albums. I think they are all absolute masterpieces, and I really can't get enough of Talk Talk. Sometimes I wish they would have done more, but part of me is also glad that they just put out 5 awesome albums and they never kind of tainted their output with something that was less than stellar. So they were active from 1982 to 1991, and so 5 albums in 9 years. They did take their time with their albums, especially their last 2 albums, and I think that really shows in their kind of artistic integrity. But I think Talk Talk has 3 secret weapons. Weapon number 1 is Mark Hollis's vocals. Just what an interesting vocalist. He's kind of nasally. Sometimes it is hard to understand what he is saying. He doesn't pronunciate or over-pronunciate his words, especially in the last couple of albums. It feels more like he's interested in just kind of creating a vibe or a mood with his vocals, and he's not so interested in delivering his words in a clear manner. Weapon number 2 is Paul Webb on the bass. Oh my God, Paul Webb, what a bassist. One of my favorite bass players of all time. And he offers up a lot of electric fretless bass. And he is on 4 of the 5 albums, and keep that in mind as I go through my rankings. And then the 3rd secret weapon is Tim Fries-Greene. And Tim Fries-Greene, like Paul Webb, was only on 4 of the 5 albums. And he brought in kind of a new sense of production and direction, kind of artistic direction. He was a multiple instrumentalist. And I kind of think of Tim Fries-Greene as Talk Talk's Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois. Kind of like how Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois were to U2, Tim Fries-Greene was to Talk Talk. Okay, so how do you rate a perfect discography? I love all 5 of these albums. Again, all 5 are 5 out of 5 albums for me. But I took a look and just thought about how much I would want to listen to each one of these albums. And that's kind of how I ranked it. And there's going to be a secret or a special bonus super number 1 at the end of this video. So my 5th album, and this might be somewhat controversial because a lot of people really love this album, and that is Laughing Stock. And so Laughing Stock, 6 tracks, nearly 45 minutes. It starts with 16 seconds of silence being punctuated by a tremolo guitar. And I imagine that this song and this whole album was a pretty big inspiration for Slowdive, especially their masterpiece Pygmalion. And this is a really good album. Their last 2 albums, Laughing Stock and Spirit of Eden, are 2 great examples of why I prefer music digitally and not on tape or album, or vinyl, I should say. And that's because these last 2 albums have a lot of silence. They have a lot of quiet parts. And I listen to a lot of music with a lot of dynamics. And when something is quiet, I don't want to hear the pops and the dust and maybe some of the rumbling of a vinyl record. I want to hear the silence. I want to hear what the artist intended me to hear. And with these 2 albums, there's a lot of time where the artist intended me to hear nothing. And so I think that's really, really important. And I think these albums sound amazing on CD. So Talk Talk's last 2 albums, Laughing Stock was 1991, produced by Tim Fries-Greene. And their last 2 albums were kind of the ground zero for post-rock. And I like Laughing Stock. It's kind of my Sunday morning album. It's not an album that I want to listen to all the time, but on a nice kind of chill Sunday morning, it's the perfect album to throw on. The songs on Laughing Stock are even kind of more nebulous and kind of free-flowing, free-form than they are on Spirit of Eden. Famously, these last 2 albums were recorded in nearly complete darkness. They had like some candles and some really soft mood lighting in the studio, and they brought in a huge number of musicians, especially on Laughingstock. There are a whole bunch of musicians that came in and just kind of recorded parts at random. I think they would give them a key and a tempo, and they kind of constructed the album in the same way that Tio Macero would do with Miles Davis, and kind of construct these albums in a modular fashion. Laughingstock has a more jazz-like feel. It's kind of space jazz. So some standout tracks. We have Ascension Day with a killer drum and organ, some great like stabbing guitar work. But one of the other reasons why this album isn't ranked higher for me is that Paul Webb is not on this album. They replaced, Paul Webb left and they replaced him with an acoustic upright bass. And I just love Paul Webb's electric fretless bass so much that I think he is really, really missing on this album. But there's some really great understated kind of harmonica and some horns here. It gets fairly noisy and builds in intensity like a lot of post-rock. And then we have a track called Taphead. And like a lot of songs on this album, this song takes its time. This is deliberate music. This is payoff music. It's a very patient and delicate album, with this song being a standout track. There's some really simple guitar work here, and Hollis's voice is lovely. Really, and it also has a really kind of slowly building organ with lots of texture. And then we have New Grass. New Grass is my favorite track on the album. It has a really laid back groove, and I think Hollis's vocals on New Grass are in top form. I love the drums on New Grass. And it also has a lot of really cool horns with some trumpet work. It has a really kind of smoky noir vibe to it, a smoky jazz noir vibe. And I feel like this track could, you could put this track on the Blade Runner soundtrack and it would fit perfectly. And yeah, so Laughingstock is really good. Again, this is a 5 out of 5 album for me, but I know that a lot of people kind of rank this as their number one. I'm just not one of them. Okay, coming in at number 2 is The Party's Over, and that is from 1982, and this one is actually produced by Colin Thurston, so the only Talk Talk album not produced by Tim Fries-Green. So Colin Thurston actually worked with David Bowie as an engineer, and he produced the first 2 Duran Duran albums, which includes Rio. And Rio is on my top 100 of all time. I love that album. It has my favorite bass playing of all time. The bass work on Rio is stunning. Talk Talk was kind of set up by their label to be the next or another Duran Duran. But Talk Talk has a much more mature sound, and I think they lack Duran Duran's kind of fashion sense and their sex appeal. Talk Talk, if you look at the members of the band, they look more like English or high school English and art teachers than they do rock stars, and so they kind of lacked that quality of Duran Duran, and I think setting them up to be another Duran Duran was kind of a mistake. So this album, The Party's Over, it's often disparaged as synth pop. And I often hear this kind of phrase when I hear people talk about Talk Talk, that they got better as they started playing more real instruments. And I disagree with that, because synthesizers are real instruments. You have the keys of a keyboard, you have sustain pedals, you have dampening pedals, but then you have so much more involved in a synthesizer. You're mixing in different waveforms, you're adjusting the frequency cutoff of your filter and your resonance, you're shaping the sound with various envelopes and bringing in different types of modulations with LFO. So a synthesizer is a very, very complex instrument. Electronic drums are super complex. You can get all kinds of weird things with electronic drums that you can't with an acoustic set. You can do interesting micro tunings. You can trigger samples and other sounds with electronic drums. So for me, synth pop is real music. A synthesizer is a real instrument, and an electronic drum set is a real instrument. And so I don't disparage this album for being only synth pop. It's a fantastic album. An album that's overflowing with amazing 80s pop songs. And if you subscribe to the channel, if you like what I'm doing, you're going to find that I am a huge, huge fan of 80s music and 80s production. There is this trend online these days to kind of disparage 80s production and 80s music, and I think it's just insane. It's my favorite decade of music by far. So I rank this album higher than Laughingstock because it does include Paul Webb's bass, and His bass is one of the stars of this album. It's amazing. However, it does lack Tim Freeze Green's kind of production and his direction, and so that's why it is ranked lower. But it's a killer album, and it's super, super energetic. The entire first side is basically one perfect pop song after another. We have Talk Talk, It's So Serious Today, and The Party's Over. All of those songs are amazing. Side 2 starts with another killer pop song, my favorite song on the album, and that is called Hatred. The album is just overflowing with great 80s pop songs. Lots of kind of glassy, shimmering sounds, chimes and bells. I don't know what synthesizers they were using. I have a feeling they might have been using some DX7 because of some of that glassy sound. But I think The Party's Over sounds fantastic, and it's the album I kind of put on when I really want a kind of a high energetic sound. Okay, coming in at number 3 is from 1984, and that's It's My Life. So this is the first album with all 3 of the secret weapons. Hollis's vocals, of course, he's on all of them. Paul Webb's bass, and Tim Freeze Green, who took over the production role on this. And this album kicks off with the fantastic song Dum Dum Girls, and almost immediately you are greeted with Paul Webb's bass, and man, it is amazing. And he's comped with some great piano and synth work. Also, almost immediately, you will notice that this album feels much more spacious than The Party's Over. It has a wider kind of stereo field. It's a little easier to get lost in the sound. This album, Green really elevates their sound to kind of a whole new level. Such a Shame, another standout track. It starts off, you might think it's a Pet Shop Boys track. I love the Pet Shop Boys. Anytime something reminds me of the Pet Shop Boys, I think that is a good thing, and I absolutely love Such a Shame. I think with Such a Shame, you can kind of feel the experimental vibe that they would introduce later on start to creep in. There's a lot more synth texture, and they bring in some really nice sounding acoustic guitar to add some balance to the electronic instruments. It's My Life, I think, is the best song on the album, and once again, Paul Webb's bass playing is just absolutely incredible. God, he's so good. I put him right up there with somebody like John Taylor from Duran Duran, or Mick Karn from Japan, or, you know, maybe not quite on the level as Tony Levin, who, you know, played with King Crimson, and Peter Gabriel, but he's up there. He's amazing. On It's My Life, it has one of my favorite synth sounds of all time, and for those of you who have heard this song, you probably know the sound I'm talking about, but it sounds like some kind of robotic seagull. I have no idea what was making that sound. I would love to know, because I absolutely love it. When I hear that sound, it just triggers something in my brain. But again, It's My Life is just another perfect pop song, and when I put it on, it's impossible for me to not want to just dance around the house like a madman. We also have a song called The Last Time, and this one has some real OMD vibes, and OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, again, a band I absolutely love. Great rhythm section. I think Talk Talk's rhythm section is really underrated. And once again, the acoustic guitar used in this album provides a nice comp to the kind of electronic sounds. And one thing you'll notice on a track like The Last Time is the band's arrangements are starting to get more complex and more adventurous. And then finally, my second favorite track on this album is Call in the Night Boy. And it has almost a more of a kind of a post-punk vibe with this really driving rhythm and a great chorus. Yeah, the chorus is just absolutely killer, and I love it. I could listen to Call in the Night Boy every single day and never get tired of it. Okay, coming in at number 2 here is Spirit of Eden, and that was in 1988, produced by Tim Freeze Green. And another album recorded in almost complete darkness. Again, I think so. Laughingstock, you know, it's my number 5. One of the other reasons why is I think that the Spirit of Eden is very similar, but it's just better in every single way. One of those reasons why is because it does have Paul Webb on bass. Spirit of Eden is another album with only 6 tracks, and they are quite long. I think it's 6 tracks and about 48 minutes long or so. The track The Rainbow has some really beautiful strings and trumpet, And a lot of the songs on their last two albums would not sound out of place on an ECM jazz album. And I kind of put these two albums, Laughingstock and Spirit of Eden, in that same kind of category as that ECM, that kind of new European jazz. They do have that quality to them. But the song has a really, really slow build, and it doesn't really kick off until 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the track. It has some great guitar, some great drums come trailing in, and some really nice harmonica swells. Some of these last two albums have some really understated harmonica work, and sometimes harmonica can really kind of grate on your ears, or at least on my ears, when it hits those really high-pitched tones, and it sounds just kind of reedy. But the harmonica work on these last two albums is great. Very moody, very atmospheric. Again, that kind of like smoky jazz vibe. Both Spirit of Eden and Laughingstock took a long time to record. They really slowed down their tempo. They spent 1 or 2 years on each of these albums, and you can really tell there's a great maturity in these last two albums. There's not much else from 1988 that sounds like Spirit of Eden. I think it was really ahead of its time, and you can kind of hear the seeds being planted for post-rock, for things like Radiohead and for Slowdive and other bands like that. Eden is another great track, really long build-up to a softly kind of driven drum part, great dynamics. It's loud and quiet, and that's kind of where that post-rock foundation is being built, these great dynamics. The songs get very loud, and then they very quickly shrink down into almost nothing. Sometimes they shrink down into complete silence. And Hollis's vocals on this entire album are great. Again, though, he is kind of hard to understand. He has a kind of a nasally quality to his voice, and I often don't really know the words that he's singing, but it's the sound of his voice that really engages me. And then with the track Inheritance, and man, if you bet that Radiohead was a fan of Talk Talk, you would be right. This sounds like something off of Kid A or OK Computer, 10, 12 years before Radiohead. And then another standout track is I Believe in You, probably the most conventional track on the album and one of the best, one of my favorite tracks by Talk Talk. The production is just off the charts great. It's so spacious and wide. It's very easy to get lost in these sounds. I think Spirit of Eden is a fantastic album to listen to on headphones. And you can kind of feel, you can hear the room, you can hear them working in this room. And you just close your eyes and it's almost like you're being teleported to this performance that you are witnessing. It's pretty fantastic. Okay, so finally at number 1, of course, that leaves The Color of Spring from 1986, again produced by Tim Freeze-Green, my favorite Talk Talk album, one of my favorite albums of all time. This is a really interesting album because it's a transitional album. So they started off, we have these two albums, we have kind of their synth pop albums, and then we have this album in The Color of Spring right in the middle, and that's followed by these two kind of post-rock, really kind of laid-back ECM style jazz albums. And The Color of Spring contains elements of both halves. And when they are mixed together, it creates one of the coolest sounding albums of all time. It's one of my favorite produced albums. I cannot get enough of this album. Every time I throw it on, I find something new to be engaged with and something new to love. So each track on this album has a ton of instrumentalists. They had a bunch of guest people come in and play in this album. It's a much bigger, fuller sound than their first two albums. And every single member is absolutely on fire, including, of course, my favorite, Paul Webb. His bass is outstanding. However, on the first track, I Don't Believe in You, we just talked about I Believe in You, but I Don't Believe in You doesn't have Paul Webb on bass. They brought in somebody for an acoustic sound. I don't know if he even played on that track, but it's a great opening to the album. Life's What You Make It, another standout track. It's actually my favorite Talk Talk track. I love this song so much. It has a killer rhythm section with some great piano, a huge infectious pop song. I would almost say this is kind of like the big music. It kind of reminds me of maybe something like the Waterboys or Tears for Fears or something like that. And I'm a huge fan of both of those bands. And it's just one of those songs that just makes me feel super happy to be alive. And that's kind of what I can say about The Color of Spring in general. This is a life-affirming album. So side 2 kicks off with Living in Another World, and my second favorite Talk Talk song. On this album, we have Steve Winwood on organ, and he's fantastic, of course, and his organ parts really add a lot to their sound. And actually, this whole album really is a showcase of great musicians playing expertly. That's really what this album is. And it's also a great example of Lee Harris, their drummer, being incredible. He's a really underrated drummer, I think. And Living in Another World is really one of their most rocking songs. It's got a killer bridge with some either harmonica or melodica, I can't really tell. But again, this is another track that does remind me of Tears for Fears, and anything that reminds me of Tears for Fears, I'm definitely down with. The song kind of evolves as it goes, always bringing in these new parts. It's got a really nice progression, and that's something I really like about it. Give It Up, another great song where Tim Fries-Green actually replaces Winwood on the organ and gives Winwood a run for his money. Green, just a fantastic keyboardist and multi-instrumentalist. I don't know if there's any instrument that he doesn't play and play well. We have another one, Time It's Time, a perfect closing track to this album. And Hollis's voice is in a slightly lower register on this album, and it's a little, or on this song, and it's a little easier to understand. It's not quite as nasally, but it also has some really nice choral work for some of the backing vocals. And yeah, man, just what a fantastic album, Color of Spring. I love it so much. And another thing that I like about Talk Talk is just their overall aesthetic, their album covers. Each one has a really nice, clean look. I mean, it's another thing that just goes into their perfect discography. They really thought about every facet of their career was thoughtful and deliberate, and that's something I really appreciate. However, my favorite all-time Talk Talk performance is not on a CD, not on an album. It's actually a live concert, and I have that on DVD, and that is Live in Montreux. This performance is amazing. Every single track on this concert performance is my favorite version of these songs. So we have Talk Talk, Dum Dum Girl, Callin' the Night Boy, Tomorrow Started, My Foolish Friend, Life's What You Make It, Does Caroline Know, It's You, Living in Another World, Give It Up, It's My Life, I Don't Believe in You, Such a Shame, and Renee. And talk about a showcase for great percussion. They have the drummer, Lee Harris, on drums, and he's joined by 2 hand percussionists. And Paul Webb's bass playing is fantastic. They're joined by, I think, 2 additional guitar players. It's a fantastic live concert. You can find it on YouTube. It is getting a little harder to find on DVD and a little expensive, but just watch it on YouTube. So yeah, let me know what you think of Talk Talk. What a brilliant band. One of the greatest bands of all time. I love them. One of the only bands that I know of that has what I would consider to be a perfect discography. I love all 5 of these albums. They're all 5 out of 5 albums for me. So, all right. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.